Good evening, everyone, and what a fantastic crowd, and welcome to the theatre tonight for our City Talk. I'd first of all like to acknowledge the original custodians of our land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, both past and present, and I'd also like to acknowledge the people of the 200 nationalities who live in our city. And I'd like to thank Stephen Hutchin, representing the Sydney Morning Herald tonight. It's a great partnership we have to put on these talks. And I'd like to very warmly welcome our keynote speaker, Chris Anderson, and all our panel members. We've got a terrific lineup tonight. I'm sorry Chris can't stay with us for the discussion, but he has to go and catch a plane to Tokyo. And we appreciate the opportunity that we will have to hear from him tonight. There was an article in a recent Good Weekend which quoted Adrian Turner, the founder of the Australian startup IT security business. He said, and I quote, "Australia is a lucky country sitting on all these natural resources, but it needs to export more than just commodities and booze." And I agree. Australia's export boom has come on the back of mining across the country, but inner city Sydney's financial contribution is up there with the mining industry, delivering 8% of the country's GDP from just 26 square kilometres. As we move from dependence on coal in particular, we need to look at how Australia will ensure its long-term financial sustainability. How do we create an environment for innovation in Sydney? And how do we nurture those start-up projects and businesses to create the mid-sized and the larger businesses of the future? That's the question we're putting to the panel tonight. I know that there are a lot of people involved in creative or technology start-up projects in Sydney here tonight, and I welcome you. There is so much happening. In the past 5 to 10 years, Sydney's shown a startling capacity for bringing groups of passionate people together on great projects. Big or soon-to-be big successes like Atlassian, 99 Dresses, Shoes of Prey, Romance Was Born, The Spreets, and start-up businesses like Pig and Rouse Phillips, MMMule.com and Uncommon Ground are just some. Aren't they fantastic names? We're seeing the results in the media too, with FBI Radio, inthemix.com.au and the Global Mail, among a cast of new entrants over the past decade. At the other end of the scale, we have groundbreaking research in our universities, as well as companies like Google producing some of their most original projects out of their Sydney headquarters. This has all been fuelled by lots of talent, a generally optimistic outlook, empty warehouses, mobile and internet access, and a spirit of collaboration and openness. On any given morning, groups link up on Twitter and meet up in cafes throughout the city to trade ideas, to share experiences, and to link up on projects. There are now so many public talks: Fast Break, Beers and Ideas, IF Talks, Green Ups, Chak-Cha, I always stumble over that. And at the other end of the scale, TEDx Sydney, which of course many of you probably attended at the weekend, thanks to Chris. And there's Interesting South, there's Creative Sydney, there's Festival of Dangerous Ideas, and our own City Talks, which you come to. In fact, on any given night, there will be multiple options for people to go out and be inspired. It's boosting the natural well of talent Sydney draws from, with a strongly do-it-yourself ethos, bringing people together on projects before they move on to others. So why do people start these kinds of innovative projects here, and how can we nurture them on their way further down the track? Our research tells us people set up businesses and choose to work in Sydney for many of the same reasons that they choose to live here. That's one of the big reasons why our long-term Sustainable Sydney 2030 plan is important. It was Sydney's biggest ever community consultation, and the result on a large scale of the kind of debate and collaboration happening in smart cities across the world, in neighbourhoods and in discussion groups, in talks and in debates. We asked people who live, work and visit the city what kind of Sydney they wanted. We work with residents, with big and small businesses, with other levels of government, with universities, with cultural institutions. We brought in some of Sydney's and the world's most creative thinkers, and our own staff were fired with enthusiasm. People told us they wanted Sydney to take the initiatives on tackling climate change. They wanted a globally competitive and innovative city. They wanted it to work more efficiently with integrated transport and a much better environment for walking and cycling around the city. They also wanted a livelier city centre, and they wanted thriving local villages. A big part of innovation is coming up with ideas and putting them into practice, such as our locally generated Trigen network of low-carbon zones taking the city off the coal-powered network. Here at the city, we do the research, we consult, and then we deliver. We're well on the way to meeting our 2030 targets across all of our areas, and I think the thing that makes Sydney a great place to live is equally the kind of things that attract people to move here for work and to set up business. That's, of course, on top of our Sydney's natural beauty. So there's a lot to attract people here. So once they're in Sydney, how do we encourage people to start great projects and stick with them? Part of it's not getting in the way. Across the board, we're looking at ways to reduce red tape. And in the meantime, we're running a series of 101 sessions for would-be entrepreneurs, taking them step by step through the process of setting up small bars, food trucks and other businesses. But many startups do need help. They need affordable space, they need advice, they need encouragement and financial support. One of the biggest challenges for startup businesses in Sydney is serious financial support. For businesses with the potential to become global players, that can mean funding in the vicinity of $100,000 to $1 million. The people with that kind of money to spend are putting it into property, into mining and to exploration. We need to start redirecting some of that money into our local talent, as well as encouraging the government to look at tax incentives so we can help innovative small businesses grow into the mid-size or larger businesses of Sydney's future. Recently, I hosted the Australian launch of Springboard. That's a program to help women entrepreneurs link up with angel investors, with CEOs, with lawyers, with accountants, and women from chambers of commerce, universities and government. Basically, what they need is to get their ideas off the ground. And I'm going to ask our CEO, she doesn't know this yet, but to look at ways the city could act as a broker or blind date some of these venture capitalists with startups. A year ago, I asked Council to run a trial using city properties on Oxford Street as affordable workspaces for creative projects. The idea was to incubate some of these great startups. We received well over 200 applications for spaces in our 66 Oxford Street property. 16 tenants moved in at the beginning of the year, including web startup aroundyou.com.au, textile design house Rouse Phillip, the shopfront gallery space Platform 72, and 2 co-working spaces, Homework and Fishburners. People started collaborating almost as soon as they moved in. It was quite remarkable to walk around the building and hear their stories. And next week, the tenants will put on their first talks and networking night. And you can find it on Twitter at 66 Meetups. A huge challenge for Sydney's emerging entrepreneurs is that of paying for accommodation because it's just too expensive to risk failing. That's where these kind of spaces come in. They give artists and creative startups a space where they can risk failing. We're now working our way through expressions of interest for another, in fact, larger property on William Street. And as well as that, we have a program of community grants for creative and community projects. I think this is one of the most important things we can do for our creative and cultural city. We're also investing in a huge range of cultural and creative events around the city, from the Sydney Festival's fantastic first night in the Biennale, and I think no one can forget the wonderful Russian Pavilion at the Cockatoo Island at the last Biennale. And of course, there's the Sydney Film Festival, and that opens next week. Our Art and About Festival takes art out of the galleries, creating surprising, wonderful moments around the city in September. It's a festival that complements our approach to opening up inner city laneways as spaces for innovation, with public art and opportunities for people to open small bars and galleries and intriguing shops and enjoy exploring the city. Much of our work is like that, integrated across our projects. We aim for beautiful, excellent design that's water, energy and waste efficient and useful for the community. The city's investment in Sydney's creative culture, $23 million in the last financial year, is being made through planning, properties, parks, events and public spaces. That means it has plenty of momentum, and the Council has asked our CEO to bring all this work together in a cultural policy for the city. That's a broad brief, because when you try to pin down the differences between inspiring people creatively and encouraging them to start up innovation, it's not easy to find the line. Over the coming months, we'll be doing workshops, surveys and vox pops. We'll be doing plenty of research, we'll be running deep community consultation, and we'll be asking what kind of creative culture we want in Sydney. Tonight's discussion is an opening salvo in that public debate. I'm so glad you're all here. Thank you.